When I started watching Andor, I never imagined Syril Karn to be the character I couldn't stop thinking about. But what began as an awkward guy with mommy issues suddenly became one of the most unique and relevant stories in Star Wars, ending with 3 words that fans will never forget.
Who are you?
And yet, how can a simple question hit that hard? How did this out-of-place, seemingly minor character evolve into one of the best parts of Andor? And what does that gun from episode 9 of season 2 have to do with it? To find out, we have to look closer. And that's when you realize that everything starts with this one blaster shot.
This is quite the report. This happened when?
Last night, sir.
He's called in by his superior. He's investigated this double murder and he's changed his uniform.
2 men are dead, sir. Employees. That's not worth staying up for, then I'm not worthy of the uniform.
So he was my Javert, you know? I'm like, oh, there's a guy who's gonna be obsessed with my hero all the way through. So he stood up right away.
From the first moment he steps into the frame, Syril expresses an almost scary amount of ambition. He sees himself as a professional man, more so than any of his surrounding colleagues, which is why he decides to go after Cassian when no one else would.
I mean, Syril is so running before he can jump. In a way, and this is a recipe of disaster with all of the things that he's wrestling with and all the things that he wants to achieve and be remembered for.
He is driven by truth, and he is convinced that the Empire has the tools needed to succeed with that they stand for order and stability, all for the good of its people. But oh boy, how wrong he was. In retrospect, Syril's awkward speech from episode 2 is a great way of understanding his mindset, so listen closely.
There comes a time when the risk of doing nothing becomes the greatest risk of all.
It's the first time he gets to articulate his beliefs in a leading role, and that's why the words come so slowly.
There's no room for doubt on the path to success. And justice.
And the actor Kyle Soller does a great job of emphasizing this point, like it's the first time Syril steps into the shoes of the man he desperately wants to become. The problem is that he doesn't get to be that man for so long.
Drop the weapon.
And that's kind of the tragic theme of this character. No matter what he does, how fiercely he fights, whatever he believes in, he can't win. And it's never more obvious than when he thinks he has won.
There's a scene early on in the first season, if you ever watch it, where, you know, there's a thing where like there's 30 seconds of sunlight comes through his room and he's waiting for that, like he's waited his whole life. And on his desk are his little action figures. And like, that guy could go, his fantasies could be anything. And he buys into this Imperial mindset.
Throughout season 1, it was almost impossible to see Syril having a significant role in the overarching story. You understood that his purpose was to showcase an ordinary person becoming entangled in the flawed web of the Imperial structure, but how that connected to Cassian Dedra or his confusing mom was a total mystery.
What is this guy? Is he good or is he bad? You know, what's his arc? And Tony would just go, I don't know.
This in turn made his actual purpose in season 2 and the integration of his weapon from the Ferrix arc even more impressive. But before we get to that, we have to address the weird start to the second season and how, awkward dialogue aside, it plays a key part in the story.
They're weird. I don't know what they do with each other, but they also get each other.
Syril is over needy to become part of things. He's so desperate to find a place of utility.
Careful all the way.
I know. I had you followed. Party has insisted.
The 2 women in his life symbolizes everything Syril embodies. His feelings, his thoughts, his insecurities, and it all culminates over that special dinner.
Such a pleasure to finally meet you.
Finally, indeed.
His mother has drowned in the idea of Syril as a failure, so much so that she can't even see when he has accomplished a bit of success.
If not for the charity of his Uncle Harrow, I can't imagine where we'd be.
And who is this Uncle Harlow that she keeps talking about? Give me your best guesses in the comments below. But let's get back to the actual point. Dedra, on the other hand, in her weird complex way, views Syril as someone to control, someone to take care of. I don't doubt that she has an affection for him, something even the actor herself acknowledges.
If I wasn't made to work for Krennic and do the Gorman thing, they probably would have coexisted pretty fine.
However, like she explains, Dedra's love for the Empire and Order goes beyond everything else, and that's why the situation on Gorman happens. Ironically, the same ambition and dedicated traits that aligned these two odd personalities is also the reason for why their relationship eventually fails.
If I say this is the greatest day of my life, does it spoil everything?
It's good to see you happy.
It was around episode 4 or 5, when you as the audience began to realize where things were headed, that the pieces of Syril's story started to make sense. Once again, his actions were slowly leading to an impending downfall, only this time it would hurt more than he could possibly realize.
For Syril, truth, justice, integrity are paramount. And the fact that the news that he would be delivering to Dedra and to Partagaz is then getting twisted up to be something else, it would be to cut too deep.
What makes the writing so brilliant is that Dedra, with all her social flaws, is completely blind to her own wrongdoing. She doesn't realize that she's using Syril in a way he wouldn't accept, and perhaps she's even incapable of seeing that her actions won't lead to a brighter future. All she sees is the mission and the success directly in front of her.
We'll be back in Coruscant. We'll be together. We'll be rewarded.
For what? What have we accomplished?
At its core, it's a clash between ruthless order and honest justice. And when Syril understands that the person he trusted and loved most in the galaxy has not only lied to him, but also made him part of an evil empire he never believed existed, he slowly begins to break down.
How long have you known about all this?
We can discuss this later.
The whole cathedral he builds inside himself is all about that, and Dedra and everything else. And
There is an armada up there.
when that comes crashing down, that's really sad to me.
You tell me it's a rumor, and I will throw you out that window.
Good luck, Dedra.
In the end, he is forced to face reality, and I think Luke Solar described this moment from an interesting perspective.
Everything he ever thought he believed in, trusted in, is shaken to its core. How he moves on from there is really the truest expression of Syril.
In other words, there is no longer a falsehood to his world, and he becomes the true Syril. For the first time, he sees life for what it is, but he also sees someone else.
God, like, this guy, I can't believe, like, at this moment, you're finally showing up.
Even if their reunion was inevitable, the show makes it feel so authentic and natural. It's an outburst filled with desperation and anger. A fight where Syril attempts to make things right, not really for the Empire, more from his own perspective. His last chance of internal redemption.
One of the great things I actually have always loved about him is he follows through where no one else will. And he just follows through to the end.
Yet this time he doesn't do it. He doesn't follow through. And it just made me like the character even more. In that moment, this line from Cassian's perspective means nothing. It's as genuine as it could be. Even if they briefly exchanged looks back in season 1 when he took Syril's gun, and I promise we will get to that detail soon, Cassian doesn't recognize him. For Syril, on the other hand, that simple question is existential. In just 3 words, it sums up his entire life, because by that point, he no longer knows who he is, what he stands for, for and what he believes in. And for that to be his final realization before he dies, man, it's just devastating. He dies in the one way a character archetype like Syril would fear most, as a nobody that in reality has accomplished nothing of significant value. And that's why he doesn't shoot. Not because he suddenly finds himself on the wrong side or because he thinks Cassian might be right. Rather because the identity Syril thought he had created no longer remains. It's like his soul left his body before his body stopped working. And it symbolizes the true evil of the Empire in one of the most powerful and relatable ways I have ever seen. Forget the Death Star destroying planets. Forget the Emperor manipulating Anakin.
Not from a Jedi.
And instead look at Syril, an everyday man who lived by rules and protocol. He becomes a metaphor for how the Empire betrayed the very ideals it claimed to stand by. Law, order, and justice. An illustration of how the promises of this authority were never meant for people like you, me, or Syril. Just a tool to serve those in power. And to bring it back to his lovely mother, the scene that made me the most emotional was the one with her, and I can't explain exactly why that's the case, yet it highlights how the writing in this show leaves no stone unturned, ensuring that every character has a meaningful role to play.
We're sure to learn a great deal more about what happened here today, and the price we'll pay for our own safety.
Alright, let's talk about the gun that got introduced in the first story of Season 1.
Whose is this?
Didn't get a name.
While I see it as a fun Easter egg by the writers, I still love the idea that Syril's own weapon lived on through the rebellion, almost becoming a symbol of his legacy. It began with Cassian, who carried it with him until he hid it on Niamos, went back for it after the prison escape and gave it to Melshi, for it then to reach into the hands of Val on Yavin 4.
Who belongs to this?
I think that's mine.
It's no coincidence that Tony Gilroy chooses to add this scene in the episode after Syril's death. Ultimately, this man represents one of the most morally grey character arcs we've yet to see in Star Wars. A man who reflects the complexity of just being human for two different kinds of things he believes in. The rule of law and doing the right thing, but simultaneously not digging himself deep enough to go fully evil. A man who in reality would have done a great job for the rebellion if he had found his way to the truth. That's why I think the weapon is a beautiful detail that represents a token of optimism, in that at least a small part of Syril got to bring justice to the galaxy far, far away. If you like Andor, here's another video you're gonna love. Thank you for watching and I wish you a great day.